Most salespeople sound exactly like salespeople the second they open their mouth. They interrupt you, they have this weird sales voice that's really annoying, and they speak like they're hoping for approval from the prospect instead of expecting it. CEOs and business owners do not do this. They communicate with authority, certainty, and weight behind every word. After closing over 200 million in high-ticket sales, dealing with Fortune 500 executives, closing for people like Jay Shetty, Mind Valley, Bedros Keuilian, as well as running my own successful sales agency in England for 5 years before I got into high-ticket closing, I'm going to show you how to communicate like a C-suite executive rather than just like a salesperson that's begging for a meeting. A huge issue that a lot of salespeople face is asking for permission. Listen to most sales calls and they'll say things like, would it be okay if I ask you a couple of questions? That's weak language. You shouldn't ask for permission to do your job. CEOs and business owners, they don't speak like this. When they walk into a meeting, they don't go, oh, would it be okay if I showed you what targets we have coming up for this next quarter? They point at people and expect answers. Ultimately, a sales call should be framed in a similar way. I'm not saying just point at prospects and expect an answer, but you shouldn't be asking for permission to do your job. You should be appearing on that call like a trusted advisor, someone that is there to help someone who is facing an issue and wants to get to some place, and you're going to be that facilitator of change. And in order to do that, you need to know a set of things. You don't need to ask permission to do that because you're trying to help. Another big issue that a lot of salespeople face is they use qualifiers before they make a statement. They say, I think that X, Y, Z, or I feel like we might be able to, or maybe we could. This shows uncertainty. People aren't coming onto a sales call to find uncertainty, because guess what? If they were certain about how to fix their problem, they would have done it themselves. They're coming onto this call to look for answers, to look for help, and they want someone who is certain they can help them. Every qualifier that you use signals uncertainty, and uncertainty is losing your authority on a sales call. And a third really common mistake that I see with salespeople is they position themselves as a consultant and they don't really have any control over the call. They'll often open with questions like, so tell me a bit about your business, or so tell me about what goals you've got at the minute, or tell me your biggest challenges. And then they are faced with usually 20 minutes of rambling, unfocused rambling from a prospect, where you're trying to grab at things that you can maybe dig into a little bit more, instead of having sniper questions where you are looking for a specific response, a specific outcome from the question that you're asking. You don't want to position yourself as this consultant who's just gathering information, just ticking the boxes. You want to be positioned as an expert who's trying to figure out a solution. So let's look at some skills where we can potentially reverse that and appear to be that CEO, that business owner, that trusted advisor on a sales call. So the first thing we're going to look at is a mindset shift. Ultimately, you need to stop trying to be liked on a sales call, thinking, oh, I hope they like me, I hope they're my friend. You need to start thinking, I'm here on this sales call to guide someone to the right decision for themselves. This isn't arrogance, this is authority. You've seen their problem 1,000 times before. You know the way out, you know the bridge to get them to where they want to go. You know what works and you know how to help them, so act like it. You need to be almost like a coach, or what I like to call a trusted advisor. The second skill that you need to master is emotional control. High emotion often signals low intelligence. The moment you become emotionally reactive on a sales call, say someone says something that rubs you up the wrong way, or throws an objection that frustrates you a little bit, and you act emotionally, you're going to lose a lot of authority. Prospects will test you. They're going to push back. This is part of the process. So if you get all jumpy, your body language signals emotional distress, you start interrupting people, you're going to lose a lot of authority by doing this. But a lot of salespeople take it personally. Their voice gets a lot higher. They start interrupting. They start explaining why the prospect's wrong. And overall, they just lose control of the conversation. When someone pushes back with pressure, you don't want to be like a toothpick that as soon as the pressure is applied, it snaps. You want to be like a blade of grass. You need to be flexible, but always going back to your original position. So a prospect might say something like, you're a bit expensive. The toothpick response here would be, well, when you consider all the value that we actually provide, X, Y, Z. But a blade of grass response would be, I understand your concern. What is it that you're more concerned about? Is it the investment or the outcome? So let's look at a practical application. This is something that you could maybe note down and bring to your next sales call if this is something that you feel like you might have been struggling with a little bit. So if a prospect says something that catches you off guard, the first thing you're going to do is pause for a few seconds and take a deep breath. You're going to then lower your voice quite a bit and respond with curiosity. And try to remove all defensiveness from your tone. Just ask usually a polite question to open it up a little bit further. For example, a prospect might say, well, I've heard really bad things about your company. So you take a minute and you say, well, what specifically have you heard? Just so I can understand your concerns. No defensiveness, no emotional reaction, just calm curiosity. Skill number 3 on a sales call is commanding authority from the start. Most salespeople start calls with so much weakness. It's like, hello, thanks for taking the time to speak with me today. Oh, do not say that, please, God. That immediately positions you lower than the prospect. How can you expect to guide someone to a decision if you're opening the call with that statement? CEOs and business owners don't start meetings thanking people for being there. They appreciate that their own time is valuable as well. It's just as valuable as the people that they are speaking to. So there is a mutual benefit between that conversation, and that's how you should position yourself as a salesperson. Your time is just as valuable as the prospects. So don't thank people for the time. Instead, try to start the calls always with focus questions that get the prospect into results-based thinking straight away. You're already asking questions to help them and help fully understand the situation. So you'd be like, welcome to the call. Can you see me okay? Hear me okay? Yeah? Great. So I believe we sent you over some free resources before the call. Did you get a chance to go through them? Were they helpful? Why were they helpful? What was most helpful for them to you? And I guess what's the biggest reason you're looking to XYZ right now? You're already getting people into results-based thinking. You're friendly, you're polite, but straight away, you're a professional who cares about getting the prospect to where they want to go, rather than being like, thanks for being on the call today. You are taking control immediately. Skill number 4 is mastering strategic questioning. Now, this video could be 5 hours long if we're looking at just questioning alone. But to give you a high-level overview of your questions, most sales reps ask things like, what's the biggest challenge that you're facing right now? If you could be somewhere else in 12 months, what would that look like? If you ask questions like that, surface level questions, you're going to get surface level responses that ultimately don't move the sale forward. You need to ask questions that cut deeper. So instead of asking things like, what's your biggest challenge right now? We want to ask things like, what's the cost of this if nothing changes? So instead of saying, what's your biggest challenge? We might want to say, what's driving the urgency to solve? So when it comes down to questioning, you can use things like Socratic questioning, or you can use my staircase framework, where we cut well below the surface level by asking the first level, which is like what-based questions. This is where we understand the specifics, like what specifically is holding you back. Don't accept surface level responses. You can use Socratic questioning, or you can use my method of questioning, which is the staircase framework. This is where we start to uncover the emotional layers behind what a prospect is saying. If they say, my leads aren't working as well as I'd like them to be, the first layer is what-based questions. So we'd say, what specifically isn't working? The second is why-based questions. So it'd be like, why do you feel like they aren't working? Or why is it so important for you to get them working? This is when we start to understand what that problem means to the prospect personally. And the third level is how. How is usually when we quantify it. So it's like, how long has this been an issue for? How much has it been costing you? How many things have you been missing out on because this problem is still in place? And the fourth layer is usually emotion or personal impact or even identity. And this is when we look at a problem or a pain and how that impacts the individual. So we might want to say things like, what's that been like for you personally? And through using questioning methods like this, we're going to get to real emotional drivers, but also the real pains and the cost for this individual. And ultimately, each level is going to build way more urgency for change. And the fifth and final skill, I want you to stop selling and start guiding. Most salespeople, when they finally present their pitch or their offer, they sound like they're selling something. They sound something like this. So we've been running for the past 5 years. We've done some huge campaigns. We've won this award last year. We've worked for some really big brands, people like Coca-Cola. We've just recently done something for Topshop. Our program accelerator includes 12 weeks of coaching. It's designed to take you from here to here. You also get access to these bonuses and this community and blah, blah, blah. This is ultimately what we call feature dumping, and it sounds salesy. CEOs and business owners like to offer strategic solutions to problems. So they say things like this: based on what you've shared, you've been facing XYZ issue for XYZ amount of time. You're looking to get over here in this time scale. I guess what makes most sense to move forwards would be, and then tailor a solution specific to what the prospect has told you, rather than this cookie cutter response that's the same for everyone that will never really move the needle. Ultimately, you shouldn't be selling, you should be recommending the next step. So now I want to show you some advanced CEO style communication tactics. The first is using silence as a weapon. CEOs and business owners, they don't give a shit about silence. They're comfortable in silence because they have that confidence. Salespeople fill every gap. Amateur salespeople, they're even interrupting. They're not even allowing gaps to exist because they're that keen to just fill space with more noise. If you ask a question and you get a response, pause, especially if it's an emotional response or it's something impactful. A small pause can allow the prospect to feel the weight of what they've said, but it also gives you space to think about the best response and to calculate your words. Look at people like Elon Musk. If you ask him a question, he sits there thinking about a response for ages, for about 4 or 5 seconds, so you can give a really good response to it. And there's nothing wrong with that, and that's what you should be doing. The second advanced communication tactic would be to be comfortable with a takeaway. Now, what I mean by that is by being completely detached from the buyer's decision. And if they are providing that resistance, then just saying, listen, this might not be for you. If you're not ready to make a change and step into the version of you that you've just described to me, then maybe this isn't for you. I can't basically force you to make that decision. And being comfortable with that and sort of putting the ball back into the prospect's court is really powerful. And it positions you as a real authority figure, not someone who's just begging for commission. Now, another advanced CEO communication tactic is outside of basically what you say, and it comes down to body language and presentation. Business owners and high-level entrepreneurs are acutely aware of this when you see salespeople, employees turning up with a crap pair of headphones on with rubbish signal and the dirty laundry behind them. Entrepreneurs are so aware of their body language and their appearance when you've got these 9-to-5 sales guys coming onto calls with shit cameras, shitty headphones, and on the Zoom call you can see the wardrobes open behind them and the dirty laundry is there. It's acutely important for, especially if you're closing over Zoom, to present yourself in a way that screams professionalism. Have good internet, have good camera quality, have a good microphone, have your body language sat like you actually belong there. Maintain eye contact. Don't start typing emails or replying to WhatsApps when you're on the call. It's these subtle cues that are going to essentially increase your authority. And that leads me finally to tonality and basically the communication outside of words. I guess one thing to mention here would be interrupting. Please just don't interrupt, ever. If a prospect is speaking, the worst thing you can do is interrupt them. If you're still interrupting during a sales call, then you might as well just quit sales altogether. I'm kidding. There is one time when interrupting is relevant. And maybe you've asked a little bit too much of an open question and the prospect is going on a tangent and it's taking you away from the sale. Sometimes you can actually ask permission to interrupt, which I don't mind. It's when prospects are like barking in their opinion as a prospect speaking or cutting them off with feature dumps or whatever. But if a prospect is going on a bit of a tangent and you think, oh God, where are they going? I don't even know what they're talking about at this point. They're talking about the cousin's auntie's bad ankle or something. You need to strategically interrupt by saying things like, excuse me, you don't mind if I interrupt? You were saying something a couple of seconds ago when remind them of the thing that's relevant. Could you tell me a bit more about that? This is just a subtle way to get someone back onto the train and back onto the actual relevant outcome of the call. So never interrupt unless you're asking for permission to interrupt and it's strategic. If you just can't control yourself and you keep interrupting people, then that's a big no-no. And finally, the pace and the pauses that you use when you're communicating are also relevant. Business owners, entrepreneurs, CEOs, they don't just rush through and try to get as many things into a sentence before someone else interrupts them as quick as possible like that. They speak strategically. They think about what they're going to say next so they can actually ensure that it's relevant. Now, to round things off, I'm going to mention the top 3 mistakes that I notice on a lot of sales calls because I review so many. I've helped hundreds of reps right now go from being completely average salespeople to top 0.1% closers. And these are some of the common things that I see a lot. Mistake 1 is over-explaining. Sometimes when someone objects, asks a challenging question, the prospect jumps to basically trying to explain his way out of the situation, when really you could just say, what makes you say that? And that question to a question or an objection can sometimes be much more powerful than you trying to explain your way out of it. Mistake number 2 would be dogging competitors. So if someone's had a bad experience with another offer, another company or another service, and you're aware of said company, person, service, and you start dogging them in, psychologically, that is a really bad thing you can do because whatever you say about someone else, they've actually done studies on this. When you comment on someone else during that process and call them bad names, scammers, whatever, the prospect actually starts to feel those things about you. So stay impartial to competition. You can just say things like, I've heard of those guys. Why was your experience not up to scratch? And the third mistake, now this might seem like a really obvious one, but I do see it quite a lot. And this would be apologizing for your offer. Saying things like, I realize that our offer's not cheap, or I realize we are pretty expensive. Never, ever, ever apologize for the pricing of your solution. Now, to wrap things up, I want to look at what your new identity is. You are no longer a salesperson trying to get someone to buy a product. You are a strategic advisor, allowing someone to make the right decision for the future. You are not selling a product or a service. You are facilitating a transformation. When you ultimately embody that identity, everything changes. If you want a complete system for high ticket sales, everything we've covered today plus loads more and direct mentorship from me, you should be able to book a call below this video or just drop me a DM on Instagram. Or if there was something that you found particularly valuable from this video, then I'd love to hear it in the comments below. Hope you enjoyed it. Ciao.